The thing that finally broke me about humanity wasn't war, religion, politics, social media, reality television, or the fact that millions of adults voluntarily watch videos of other adults opening boxes. It was realizing that nearly every person on Earth is participating in the exact same cosmic scam, and somehow nobody notices. Life is the only product in existence with a 100% failure rate, a mandatory expiration date, no refund policy, no customer support, no instruction manual, no warranty, and a list of side effects longer than a pharmaceutical commercial, yet people defend it with the enthusiasm of unpaid brand ambassadors. If a blender exploded in every customer's face after 70 years, the manufacturer would be dragged before Congress. If a car guaranteed eventual catastrophic failure, lawsuits would blot out the sun. But existence? Existence kills literally every customer, and people still call it a gift. A gift. I love that one. Humans call life a gift because apparently the definition of a gift is something you never requested, never consented to receive, cannot return, are legally and socially pressured to keep, and are blamed for not appreciating. Imagine Christmas morning. You wake up and discover somebody has chained a piano to your back. Everyone around you starts clapping. "What a wonderful gift," they shout. You explain that the piano is crushing your spine. They tell you you're focusing on the negative. You point out that the piano wasn't requested. They accuse you of ingratitude. You explain that you'd like to remove the piano. At this point, an entire committee of experts arrives to explain why carrying the piano builds character. The funniest part is how hard people work to avoid examining the premise. Ask somebody why life is inherently good and watch them react like you've asked them to calculate quantum mechanics using a potato. They stare into the middle distance. Their brain begins making dial-up internet noises. Eventually they produce something like, "Well, because you're alive." Fantastic. A truly devastating intellectual achievement. By that logic, cancer is good because cancer exists. Debt is good because debt exists. Food poisoning is good because food poisoning exists. Humanity has somehow mistaken biological programming for philosophy and then spent thousands of years acting smug about it. The entire thing starts looking even more ridiculous when you remember how existence is actually structured. You spend the first few years unable to walk, feed yourself, speak, or avoid sticking dangerous objects into your mouth. Then you spend the next 20 years being trained for participation in a giant economic machine. Then you spend 40 years renting your consciousness to employers in exchange for permission to continue purchasing food. Then your body begins malfunctioning one component at a time, like a Soviet refrigerator. Your knees declare independence. Your back launches a rebellion. Random organs start sending threatening letters. Hair abandons strategic locations. New and exciting pains appear every morning like downloadable content nobody purchased. Then eventually you die. Humanity looked at this arrangement and said, "This is the greatest gift imaginable." People love pointing to the good moments as though they settle the argument. "What about sunsets?" they ask triumphantly. What about them? The fact that a sunset exists does not magically explain why everything else exists. This is like defending a house fire because occasionally the flames create beautiful lighting effects. Imagine somebody standing in a collapsing building saying, "Sure, the roof is falling in, but have you seen the way the sunlight hits the smoke?" Humans will watch their entire family age toward death and then point at a rainbow like they've solved philosophy. My favorite part is the obsession with potential. Humans are addicted to potential. Potential is their emotional support animal. Things could get better, they insist. That's true. They could also get worse. Somehow only one half of the equation gets airtime. You could become rich. You could also develop a mysterious medical condition that requires 12 specialists and a Facebook fundraiser. You could find true love. You could also discover that true love snores like a chainsaw possessed by demons. You could achieve your dreams. You could discover your dreams were stupid. Nobody knows. Yet potential is constantly treated like evidence. It's not evidence. It's a lottery ticket with philosophical branding. Then there's the whole aging situation, which might be the greatest practical joke ever conceived. Think about it. Evolution spends decades building a functioning organism, hands it consciousness, gives it hopes and ambitions, and then immediately starts dismantling it. It's like hiring contractors to build a house while simultaneously paying a second team to remove one brick every day. By the time most people understand what's going on, they're already participating in a slow-motion demolition project. Nature is essentially a landlord who starts evicting tenants before they've finished unpacking. The body itself is an absolute masterpiece of bad engineering. Teeth can destroy themselves while sitting perfectly still. The spine is a stack of bones balanced like a drunken architectural experiment. Eyes gradually stop focusing because apparently looking at things for several decades is simply too much to ask. The immune system occasionally becomes confused and declares war on its own country. The brain, humanity's most important organ, is made of meat and powered by electricity. This is apparently the pinnacle of design. Somewhere an engineer is weeping. And then there are human emotions, which feel less like a sophisticated guidance system and more like malware. Anxiety convinces you that catastrophe is imminent. Depression convinces you catastrophe has already occurred. Jealousy convinces you everyone else is having a better time. Nostalgia convinces you the past was better. Regret convinces you every decision was wrong. The human mind is essentially a committee of malfunctioning advisors screaming contradictory instructions from inside a burning vehicle. The social side is somehow even funnier. Society spends every waking moment generating problems and then congratulates itself for inventing solutions. First, we create impossible beauty standards. Then we invent therapy for insecurity. First, we create economic systems that grind people into dust. Then we publish self-help books explaining how to remain positive while being ground into dust. First, we construct cities that isolate individuals from one another. Then we fund loneliness studies. It's like watching a man set his own kitchen on fire and then expecting applause because he purchased a fire extinguisher. Nothing reveals the absurdity more clearly than the way people discuss meaning. Human beings are constantly searching for meaning because existence forgot to include one in the box. Imagine buying a television that arrived completely empty inside. The manufacturer shrugs and says, "You create the picture yourself." That's essentially the philosophy of half the planet. People spend decades desperately constructing significance out of careers, hobbies, relationships, sports teams, political movements, collectible figurines, fantasy football leagues, and arguments with strangers on the internet. Entire identities are built from stacks of improvised explanations held together with emotional duct tape. Then death enters the room, and somehow everyone acts surprised. Death is literally the only guaranteed event in the entire process. It has never missed an appointment. It has a perfect attendance record. Every emperor, every billionaire, every saint, every genius, every influencer, every conspiracy theorist, every motivational speaker, every gym bro, every philosopher, every person who ever announced they were built different eventually receives the exact same outcome. Yet humanity continues behaving as though this information is somehow breaking news. The truly dark comedy is that society treats questioning any of this as evidence of irrationality. You are allowed to complain about traffic. You are allowed to complain about taxes. You are allowed to complain about inflation, politics, diseases, work schedules, housing costs, aging, insomnia, loneliness, heartbreak, bureaucracy, and the fact that printers appear to be powered by ancient curses. But if you connect the dots and ask whether the overall arrangement is actually all that impressive, suddenly people act like you've wandered into the town square carrying forbidden knowledge. That's because the real religion isn't Christianity, Islam, capitalism, nationalism, progressivism, conservatism, or any other banner humans wave around. The real religion is existence itself. The central commandment is simple. Life is good, evidence optional, questions discouraged, contradictions ignored, side effects omitted. Every culture decorates the doctrine differently, but the underlying belief remains remarkably stable. Life is assumed innocent until proven guilty. Suffering, aging, disease, grief, and mortality are expected to defend themselves. The burden of proof is never assigned to existence. It simply receives automatic moral immunity, and maybe that's the funniest joke of all. Humanity spends every day fighting the consequences of existence, while simultaneously insisting existence is beyond criticism. We build hospitals because bodies fail. We build psychiatric wards because minds fail. We build courts because people fail. We build nursing homes because aging fails. We build cemeteries because eventually everything fails. Then we gather around and declare the system a miracle. If an accountant presented numbers this bad, he'd be fired. If an engineer produced a machine this unreliable, she'd be laughed out of the building. But existence gets a standing ovation. The cosmic punchline is that nobody actually knows what they're talking about. The optimists don't know, the pessimists don't know, the philosophers don't know, the priests don't know, the scientists know vastly more than everyone else and still don't know. We are a species of highly anxious primates riding a wet rock through an indifferent universe while arguing over the objective value of a condition none of us requested and none of us can permanently keep. And somehow we're all expected to speak with absolute certainty. That is the joke. Not merely that life contains suffering, not merely that it ends. The joke is that a species trapped inside a temporary biological accident somehow convinced itself that the arrangement was obviously perfect, and anyone who asks for a receipt is being unreasonable.